Right, I am back, not with a Destiny video today, with a video about Xbox, a more general topic that has been all over the news this week, especially because it was the big Xbox showcase. I have been doing battle, shall we say, with Xbox fanboys for, I don't know, a couple weeks now, a couple months. I've kind of lost track. Where I have now been pigeonholed into being a Sony person, something I find hilarious because I spent the entire first, probably year of this console generation being incredibly critical of the PS5 and all of the things that I found kind of lacking with it, the failure to remove its copying phase, the low battery life, the new UI, which I hated. Then I report on and have opinions on what is currently happening in the space. And what is happening right now is that Xbox seems to be kind of shuffling around a bit and a bit lost in the weeds while PS5 has found its footing. And this has happened in a few ways, but obviously there are some Xbox highlights as well. And I kind of wanted to just do a broader video piece on kind of what I view as the top-down overall picture of what's going on here. And the main issue right now is that Xbox has taken a very long time to get its promised first-party ambitions started. And this is not like some breaking news story. Like, Xbox itself repeatedly said that its lack of first-party games was a detriment to the Xbox brand, and that is something that they were looking to rectify by buying all these companies. That is something that kind of plagued them for pretty much the entire last generation, where yes, they had some good exclusives, but they were always lagging behind both Sony and Nintendo in that department. Nothing has really come along to change that narrative, and it was very cool. And in 21, when Xbox was named Publisher of the Year by Metacritic, that involves some very high-scoring games on Metacritic, like Microsoft Flight Simulator. I think was that Forza Horizon. I think Psychonauts was in there. But we are still not really. We have not really hit the. Here is the blockbuster, Game of the Year contender release from Xbox. We have seen more than one of those. From Sony already. God of War Ragnarok did not win Game of the Year over Elden Ring, but that was huge release last year. Horizon Forbidden West may have been mildly disappointing and not like making a huge impact, but that was still a pretty big game. Whereas Xbox had just a very vacant 2022 because they delayed their two biggest games, Redfall and Starfield, into this year. And that leads us to now where we are. And this kind of debate about, well, is this going to be the year? Is this going to be, Xbox's big turnaround year? And it very well could be. But there are a lot of questions that have been raised kind of in just the first few weeks of the year here about how things are going to go. At least we have started off with something unequivocally positive. The release of Hi-Fi Rush, the surprise drop that they revealed and launched the same day during the showcase from the Evil Within studio, which is about as polar opposite a game as you can imagine, is incredible. It's a fantastic game. I'm playing it right now, as you can see. It is a rhythm combat game, which, I played DDR and Guitar Hero back in the day, and I played Beat Saber in VR, and that's what I associate with rhythm games. I know there are other rhythm-based combat games out there, but none quite like this, and none, I would say, that feel as good to play as this. This is an exceptional game. It's probably one of the best stealth drops I've ever seen. This doesn't really happen very often. The last enormous stealth drop I remember is Apex Legends, where that pretty much was announced and came out in within 2 days or something, and then that is still a huge fixture today. So that's probably the most significant one. But this is a unequivocal success, a huge win for Game Pass. Obviously, it launched on Game Pass. It's selling well on Steam. It's $30, and it's still, I believe, the highest grossing currently available game on Steam, outside of CSGO microtransactions and pre-sales for Hogwarts Legacy. That is impressive. It has ridiculously high user scores so far. There's one critic score in, but user scores are very high, 98% on Steam, 9.2 out of 10 on Metacritic, which is very rare. I wrote earlier, it's one of the best user scored games of the year. Uh, and it is an incredible production that no one predicted because it was a total secret. So that is a big win for Xbox and one of the studios they acquired under Bethesda. So there is nothing but positives to say in that regard. That leads kind of to the rest of the year where we got a look at Redfall as the closer of the showcase year. We got to look at Forza Horizon, Minecraft Legends. Anything with Minecraft is going to be hugely popular. It is also not going to be something I can really judge because I'm just not a Minecraft person. That is a series generally that skews younger, but I am sure that will be immensely popular among that crowd. Forza Motorsport returning is a big deal. Everyone always gets mad at me when I say that racing is a niche genre, but it is a niche genre. Not to say that, having the most consistently great racing series as one of your flagships is a bad thing. It's a great thing. Microsoft has, Forza Horizon, Forza Motorsport. These are the best racing games that exist. I would put both of them above PlayStation's Gran Turismo these days. It's just that compared to other blockbusters, they are generally not as widely played as those. It's just numbers. So while there will be a very large enthusiast crowd playing something like Forza Motorsport, I don't know if that's quite the same category as what we're talking about with Redfall and Starfield here, which I think are meant to have broader appeal. Redfall is probably the game I have the most mixed feelings about. Like, at baseline, I really trust Arcane. Arcane has yet to kind of go wrong in any real capacity. Dishonored is an incredible game. Prey is one of my favorite kind of sleeper games. I didn't love Deathloop personally, but I understand why a lot of people did. I understand why it was like at least kind of in contention for a Game of the Year slot. It did a lot of really unique things that were very cool, very out there. And I didn't, fully see it through. I kind of had my fill of it at a certain point. I still get it. Redfall, I'm just really wondering how this is going to feel like an evolution. I don't want to say evolution, but the main thing that keeps coming back to me is like when they were pitching this in the video, it was like, defeat these mini bosses to to clear this zone and unlock the final boss, or like here is the safe hub zone where NPCs will give you quests out in the world, and like they're saying all this stuff like it's new and not like it's the past 15 years of open world games. And like they've been very open about like this is our take on Far Cry, this is like our take on Borderlands co-op shooting, like stuff like that. So it's not like they're trying to hide that. I'm still not quite sure what their take is here. The vampires are a difference. Like, usually games like this might be about, zombies or something. Like zombies is a much more common, thing to fight, or bandits or whatever. But vampires is pretty new, and there are some new mechanics like, staking them with your gun and stuff like that. But is that like the main thing? I also have a little bit of concerns about how shooting looked. Shooting has always like not really been Arcane's strong suit, I would say. Like most of their games are more reliant on like ability use, and while there are, you summon a raven, you summon a robot, like you summon a shield, things like that in Redfall, like unless this game feels really good to play, I think that's going to be a big detriment. Borderlands, you might not like Borderlands humor, you might not like or care about endgame grinding or whatever, but like those games have felt, especially more recent ones, those feel really good to play. Like gunplay is really good. Destiny 2, my favorite game. Say what you will about Destiny and its live service model, whatever. Bungie designs shooters that feel better than anything else on the market, I would argue. Call of Duty, one of the reasons that's been so sticky is because how good gunplay feels for that genre of shooter. This is something I can't fully judge until I get it in my hand. It's just, it doesn't really look all there. And, there's still months left to go until its May release here. but that is one point of concern I have. I am very excited to explore the map. What I am hoping to see from Arcane is a very, very detailed, interesting map full of a lot of secrets and surprises. This feels like this could be something maybe a bit more evolved than recent Far Cry or Assassin's Creed open world games, and differentiate it from like kind of the Ubisoft model where even more care and detail and like intricacies are put into a map that like you're not riding around on horseback or in a car. It's not that big. Like it's an island you're traversing on foot, and I think they want to make kind of every inch of it interesting. That said, to me personally, I also am a huge Borderlands player. I am a huge looter shooter person, and this is a game that has 4 upgradable classes and randomized loot drops. So that alone is something that directly appeals to me. I had an open question about whether or not Redfall has an endgame grind, and I don't really care whether it does or not. Like it won't affect my kind of my desire to play the game. I'm just wondering because if you're going off Far Cry, that game's just about kind of clearing the island and beating it. Whereas Borderlands is about going through the story, but then there's stuff set up as an endgame grind. You're running quasi raids and dungeons and farming for loot and stuff. And I don't know if that is a goal of Redfall or if it's just kill the vampire gods and that's roll credits and you're done. I'm fine with either. I don't need an endgame grind. I am just curious what they have planned there. And despite the information they're presenting is like neighborhood clearing and like side quests and like it's not really things I have the most pressing questions about. So if I had to flip I think Redfall is going to be good. I do. I trust Arcane enough. I am interested enough in the core concept. I just wonder if it will be like a WoW game. Like, oh my god, like yeah, absolutely. This is a home run for Xbox. Huge launch for them. At the very least now, I am certainly predicting that it will compare favorably against Forspoken. I wrote an article at the beginning of the year that said like, if Forspoken's a hit and Spider-Man comes out this year, like this could be PlayStation's year. And now we're moving through the year. Forspoken is not a hit. Not really. Like the best praise I'm hearing for Forspoken is actually it's not as bad as people are saying, which is not really a great starting point. I think maybe too much was made of the cringe dialogue that is hardly, this is hardly the only game with like not great video game dialogue. I do think gameplay is one of its strong suits. That seems to be what a lot of people are connecting with. But on the whole, like it did not review well. There's no two ways about it. And I have to believe from what I've seen from Redfall, from what I know about Arcane, I can't see Redfall falling short like Forspoken has. So I think that matchup, if you want to call it that, I'm only really putting these together because they're rival exclusive games that are in the first half of this year that are open world and whatever. I think Redfall by default is probably going to win that matchup there. All of this leads to kind of the big elephant in the room, Starfield. And Microsoft was very good at setting expectations. The whole show they did was extremely good. I think the presentation, the format of that was fantastic. I'd love to see more stuff like that. Really solid way to do that. And they did tell us ahead of time, Starfield will not be at this. There will be a Starfield showcase at a later date. What we know now is apparently sometime between now and June, when there is another full Xbox showcase, there will be a Starfield showcase. But with Redfall launching in May, this idea that Starfield is going to come out in the first half of the year seems like it's not going to happen. I just don't really know why you would launch Starfield in, say, June. Like, certainly it's not coming earlier than May, earlier than Redfall. I don't know why you would launch it in June outside of, like, trying to fulfill some sort of financial year obligation to get it out before X time or whatever. In June, you're going to be running into Diablo, allegedly, unless that gets delayed, which it might. And then on the PlayStation side, that's when Final Fantasy 16 comes out, unless that's delayed. Whereas if you push Starfield to fall, I could easily see Starfield being the biggest game of the fall. I'm pretty sure it will be. Nothing like it. It's a little different because it's a Game Pass game, so you're not relying on like crazy box sales and stuff. But like people will pick it up for PC. some people will buy copies instead of, playing on a Game Pass. Or, if it's this huge Game Pass draw, it can be a system seller for Xbox. Like, that is kind of the definition of a system seller. If Starfield is good, it will sell Xboxes to a certain extent, even if, yes, you can access Game Pass through other devices and whatever. Uh, that seems more logical to me. We know there won't be that much competition. I don't think this fall in terms of compared to a normal year. There is no mainline Call of Duty release around that time, like in November, like there normally would be. I am 80% sure that Spider-Man 2 is not going to release in 2023. Like, any first date or approximate date that you get from a giant AAA game is almost certainly going to get delayed. Like, all the games we're talking about here included Redfall, Starfield. Like, Starfield famously had its set November date where they gave us an exact date because that's just how confident they were. And now we're talking about, a full year delay. What is it, 2 years after Halo Infinite also did a full year delay. And many would argue that did not really help it as much as it needed. But what do I think about Starfield in general in terms of its quality? I have a very tough time believing that Starfield won't be a great game, or at least become a great game over time. I do not think Bethesda will let it out the door in a cyberpunk, just completely butchered state from any sense of that. I do think maybe they've gone a little overboard in conceptualizing things, and maybe this game suffered from feature creep, like 1,000 planets to explore. Like, I know they're trying to be No Man's Sky, but like I don't know. That seems iffy to me, and like a script that's like twice as long as any other past game. It reeks of some amount of bloat and sort of maybe not over promising, but an overabundance of stuff they're trying to jam in one game. That said, what's a bad Bethesda mainline game from, we're talking about the Fallout series and the Elder Scrolls series. Like, some people may not like, Fallout 4 or whatever, but like, those were huge games. Those were unequivocal successes. Those are some of the biggest franchises in the industry. So if Bethesda is putting that amount of work into a brand new IP, I have to believe it is going to be something significant and a huge IP for Xbox going forward now that Bethesda is under them. That said, because of how big this game is, because of how much it's been delayed, because there's clearly a lot of work to be done on it, might be delayed again, in theory, and it's a Bethesda game. Those games launch with, some of the most hilarious bugs in the industry, some of which last for years and years, and like, those games are so sprawling that they never catch all the bugs, so there are many bugs inside most Bethesda releases. So that is where I think things are going. I don't think it's going to release in June. I don't think it's going to be delayed all the way till 2024. I think Microsoft is going to try to position it as a 2023 release, and I think it'll be good. I think it will be good. I assume it will have some sort of technical challenges, bugs, whatever at launch. I know it will create some big console war thing about, if this lives up to Fallout or Elder Scrolls, if Bethesda's lost their touch. Like, you could see these narratives coming from, a mile away. But fundamentally, I think that's where we're going. And to me, a year that spaces out, now we have this blockbuster out of nowhere hit, Hi-Fi Rush at this first part of the year. And then we'll have Redfall in May, and then we'll have Forza Motorsport in whatever it is. Some people are saying like end of June, maybe a little later, and then Starfield in as a holiday release. That's pretty incredible. And this is obviously a big year among its competitors as well. Nintendo has Tears of the Kingdom coming out in May. Sony has Sony whatever comes will have Final Fantasy 16 out. It's console exclusive. They could have Spider-Man out. If they do have Spider-Man out, that is going to sell better than pretty much anything, guaranteed. Spider-Man 1 was the biggest PS4 game. Just like that sold 20, 30 million copies. It's way more than you might imagine Spider-Man sold. It is their biggest exclusive in an extremely long time. But I have my doubts it'll actually come out this year based on how AAA game dev works. So, like, the way things are formulating now, like, yes, I'm shifting my view that, Sony could end up ruling this year. Like, that is seeming less likely as time goes on. Already we have one miss from Sony in the form of Forspoken, and, it's a Square Enix thing, but it's Sony very much owns that. And I would very much call that a miss, even if you want to say it's, better than you think. And then Xbox is a very clear win with Hi-Fi Rush here, even if that's not like a crazy, crazy explosive mainstream hit, because a game of this size is not usually that big. It's still an unequivocal win for them, and we know Redfall's coming out. Arcane has earned a lot of trust. Forza is obviously going to be good for a racing game. I'm sure it will be excellent. And then I just can't imagine. I can't imagine Starfield doesn't come out this year after, it's already been delayed from last November. And I can't imagine it is not going to be good in some capacity. Granted, I probably would have said the same thing about Cyberpunk 2077, 6 months ahead of launch before we knew anything. But, I think Bethesda has even more of a track record than CDPR does with, they were coming out The Witcher 3, but I think Bethesda has more of a history which says it's probably going to be a huge, sprawling, heavily, highly played game that launches with a lot of bugs, and that's probably where we're at. So, longer term, I don't want to get into the whole like grand scope of Xbox's library, but this is the third year of this console generation, and outside of it's highly scored Microsoft Flight Simulator and Forza Horizon, Halo Infinite, it is hard to wash away like the damage Halo Infinite did to not just the Halo brand, but I think to Xbox, because that was supposed to be the flagship release here. And so now, things turn to Bethesda, and these two games specifically really have to deliver. Past that, we just keep hearing all this weird stuff about, is this game in trouble? When's this being made? We're not even going to see Avowed this year. Who's working on Fable now? Are they switching engines? What's happening with Perfect Dark? Did the Initiative, or whatever, the Initiative, what are they doing? There was a lot of questions there, so much so that we have no real sense what's going on there. But we're still in a fundamental place where everyone kind of trusts Sony devs to deliver on good exclusives, not just one Sony dev, 5 Sony devs. Everyone, Spider-Man 2 will be good. I don't think there's a question there. Ghost of Tsushima 2, whatever Naughty Dog does next, it will be, well, maybe people will yell about it more, but it'll be good. It'll sell a lot. Whereas Xbox is not really shown yet that outside of say Forza, that they can really manage these, first party series, either their old ones or these new ones yet, in terms of getting all these new teams and stuff they bought to produce something of value. And that may start this year with Redfall and Starfield specifically, but again, this is year 3, so things are not exactly, off to the races here. So that is kind of my expanded thoughts on this. I was trying to keep this under 20 minutes, which I failed to do, but I talked a little bit about PlayStation here. I guess I could do a separate PlayStation one, but it's kind of interlinked, and I don't think there was many open questions about PlayStation stuff now that Forspoken's here. It's not great. Final Fantasy 16 is coming. I'm sure that will be good for Final Fantasy fans, and then I doubt Spider-Man will make it out this year, and that's kind of the main narrative for Sony. So it does seem like Microsoft will have the arsenal, shall we say, to make this, obviously a better year than last year, which was almost nothing. So by default, since everything got pushed to this year, it should be a big year for them. But even if I have some individual concerns about the games and the timing and stuff, it seems like it's going to be a good year overall. So now I'm going to go play more. I keep wanting to say High on Life instead of Hi-Fi Rush, but that's much different. That was also a success, launching on Game Pass for them. So, well, outside of recent events, but besides that. Okay. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will be back with more Destiny content next week here. So take care.